Hi, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Haptik's webinar of how conversational AI is causing a shift in e-commerce customer service. We will be starting in the next 30 seconds. I request all attendees to settle down, make sure your headphones are plugged in, and gear up for an interesting panel. Hi,
Hi
everyone.
everyone.
We're
We're
just
just
testing our
testing our
mic.
mic.
Just give us
Just give
30
us 30
seconds.
seconds.
And we will get going live right away. There is some people are facing technical issues. Just give us 30 seconds and we'll sort that out. All right. I hope you all are ready. Some of the panelists were facing issues, which has now been rectified. So let's get the webinar started. First of all, thank you and welcome all of you for joining us for the first ever web panel discussion, which we at Haptik are organizing. This is the first time we are doing a web panel where we've got industry experts to join us and share their learnings with us and obviously with all the audience members here. So we're very excited about this and we've got a really rock star panel lined up for the discussion today. Before I begin and get to the panel, quickly we had about 450 plus registrations. We have attendees coming from e-commerce companies like Flipkart, Yatra, Byju's, and even traditional companies like ICICI Bank, Nissan, Marico, amongst various attendees. So a big thanks to all of you who have come and joined us for this webinar today. And we'll make sure that the next 45 minutes are really interesting and insightful. Quick background about me. Hi, I am Kartik Poddar. I look after the entire enterprise vertical at Haptik, and I have about 10 plus years of experience primarily in product management. And the reason I bring that up is that, very interestingly, the entire panel today is full of either ex product managers or current product managers. So expect this to be a fairly product focused discussion. And and we've got some really interesting questions as well, which we'll kind of walk through in the end. Before I proceed, some housekeeping rules. With me assisting on the webinar is Shubham. So in case any of the attendees at this point in time have any issues, just use the chat button over there and Shubham will make sure that she's able to patch you in. To keep the entire conversation structured and avoid any noise, all of you have been muted. So in case you have any input or if you have any questions, the chat window is your way to address that to us, and we'll be taking those questions in the end. Awesome. Quick background about Haptik. Yep. So, like most of you, I hope by now know we are one of the world's largest conversational AI platforms. We across our consumer and the enterprise business, we process close to 2 billion plus interactions till date. And I'm sure a bunch of you would have read about the recent investment by Reliance Jio. So now, with them being our partner, we are investing a lot in our technology, in voice capabilities, and obviously making our bots smarter. Great. So without further ado, let me just quickly introduce you the panel, the very interesting and rockstar panel that we have here today. The entire goal when we went about deciding this webinar was let's get experts from the industry. Doesn't matter if they are Haptik customers or not. And let's learn from them in terms of what they have done when it comes to implementing chatbot as well as conversational AI within their organization. So let me firstly introduce you our first panelist, Arun Lakshman, who's a principal product manager at Grofers. Grofers, as we all know, is one of India's largest grocery delivery company. Arun is an alum of ISB, and at Grofers, he manages product management for logistics, planning, as well as the checkout experience. Prior to Grofers, Arun has been working with companies like Practo and Caterpillar Inc. And when he's not working, Arun loves to unwind by reading as well as playing sports. Arun, say hi to all our audience members.
Hello, folks. Interesting to be part of a webinar right now.
Thanks, Arun. Welcome. Had this been a live conference, I think by now I would have heard a lot of claps, but then I'll assume all audience members are clapping on their desks at this point in time. Great. Let me move you to the next panelist, Sheshadri Vyas, who's also from the product team at Goibibo, and he leads the entire product management experience for the customer experience at Goibibo. So I would say a fairly interesting role. He's an alum of Asian Institute of Management, Manila, and has worked with multiple startups as well as large organizations in his career. Sheshadri is based out of Bangalore. Sheshadri, what is the one thing about Bangalore that you love the most?
Well, first of all, good morning. Hi all and welcome to the session. Looking forward to it. One thing about Bangalore is that it's, especially over the last week, it's starting to get its old weather charm, the thing that Bangalore was originally famous for and known for, right? So we're starting to get traces of that weather back, and it's amazing.
Interesting. So from the cool weather of Bangalore moving to the hot weather of Delhi, Delhi NCR, which is where our third panelist is from, Goel, who joins us from Oyo Rooms. Varitant is an IIT Kanpur alum. Varitant is an IIT Kanpur alum, and he's a product manager with over 5 years of experience in internet startups. Prior to Oyo, Varitant was with Hike Messenger. Varitant, say hi to our audience members.
Hey everyone, glad you could join and looking forward to having some good time with you right now.
Awesome. Thank you, panelists. So let's get the panel discussion started. Before I kind of bring about the first question, I quickly wanted to divert the audience members' attention to this slide right now. And that is really the base of what we will use for our discussion going forward. We have seen there has been a dramatic shift in how customer service has been being handled in the last few years, right? Previously, customers could always reach out to organizations as per organizations' policies, so their working hours, their mediums, and their way of dealing with their customers. But all of that has changed right now. These days, customers expect the organization to be available throughout. They expect instant responses, and they expect their queries to be resolved in the most appropriate way at that particular moment. Along with that, the entire proliferation of social media means that the interaction between the customer and the brand is no longer confined to just two of them. Everything is out there for people to see. So one miss from the company in handling a customer could very well become a social media disaster, right? That's really been the change. And especially for e-commerce companies, this is fairly unique because e-commerce companies are all about now and instant. Grofers promises 2-hour delivery. Oyo promises instant bookings. Goibibo gives you flight booking within like 10 seconds of making the payment. So consumers are used to getting everything to them instantly, which means they also now expect customer service to be instant. And the other challenge which e-commerce companies face is that typically they are very asset light. So They are not about investing huge number of people in call centers. They are not about in having a lot of people thrown behind customer service. So with an asset light model that they operate, customer service obviously becomes a very interesting challenge for them to solve. With that background in mind, let's quickly get our panel discussion started. Let me actually pose the first question to our panelists in terms of what are the top customer support queries they receive. And this will kind of give the audience a flavor of what are the kind of challenges you are dealing with. And I would like to start off maybe with Arun from Grofers in terms of what are you seeing when it comes to customer support?
Sure. So I think this is a little, most e-commerce companies would have something similar, I'm guessing. Is the first one is anxiety from the customer on where their order is or what is happening with their order, right? So that is the number one query for us. Unfortunately, I can't give out the exact quantum these queries come in. So most of them are around, where is my order? When do I get it delivered? Hey, I don't see the delivery boy on the network, or I don't have his phone number, or his phone is not reachable. So all of those are, sort of one family of where is the order for the customer. So that would be number one. Number two is around, something's wrong with my order. It happens that something is broken in when it is shipped. Customer is not happy with the quality of the product that they receive, and they want to start a return process, or they want a refund for the thing that was broken. So that is the second sort of largest chunk of queries that we at Grofers get.
Got it. Okay, fair. Varitant, at Oyo, I would believe the kind of queries would be very different. What are you seeing?
Yeah, so at Oyo, our customer queries are basically like we in the organization kind of break it down into three major buckets. The first one is like during the experience, the user is trying to make a booking. The second one is after the user has made a booking, and the third one is, let's say, if the user has checked in or checked out at the hotel that in which the booking was made. So some of like the largest chunk is post the booking has been made. So the user might want to, like as Arun also mentioned, that people look like is their order confirmed, is the delivery boy coming or not. Similarly at Oyo, people are interested like is their booking confirmed, has the payment been confirmed, or the second one is if they want to cancel their booking or they want to like get some directions to the hotel, how to reach, etc., or the hotel manager's number. So this is one chunk for post booking. Then the second is for booking a hotel, the users are interested to get some options which may be suitable to them according to the needs, or a particular amenity like a swimming pool or something like that in Goa, etc. So they might want to know some properties, and they might want to know some special discounts at some hotels that might basically help them create a booking. The third, as I mentioned, was after the user has checked in or checked out, the queries are related to like some issues they might face in the hotel related to staff or a particular amenity like AC not working or things like that. And the last one is something related to payments and refunds. Like if the payment did not go through once the user has checked out, or there was some issue for which the refund is pending, then getting to know like when will my refund come back, or when will my cashback come, etc.
Wow. Okay. So seems like there is a wide variety of categories where your top queries fall. Interesting. Shishadri, I mean, I guess between Grofers and Oyo's queries, most of the top queries would have been covered. Is there anything else or anything interesting you see at Goibibo when it comes to the support queries?
Yeah, we do have a very interesting use case for our bot. So and let me just quickly talk about that. So at Goibibo, we have a tier-based loyalty program, which has benefits like a free cab ride or a free stay at an airport lounge, depending upon whether you're a gold, silver, platinum, titanium, bronze customer levels. So this is actually one of our most important use cases, because immediately post a transaction is completed, we make this promise to a user that they can avail these benefits. So the first thing that we notice that a lot of users do is that post a transaction is done, they interact with the bot to redeem these benefits. right? And this is a fairly significant chunk. And apart from that, the points that Arun and Varidhan mentioned, like order tracking or state questions related to the status of a transaction, putting it in more general words, and then followed by refund statuses and cancellation charges or so on, are the other kinds of buckets. And very interestingly, actionables, which is like people actually trying to do an end-to-end cancellation or a modification of their ticket, falls about less than 10% of our use cases. It does exist in a fairly large number, but not one of our heads right now. And I think just like hearing the answers of Arun and Varitant, I think it just like throws to light that a conversational product is like a true horizontal product capability inside an org, right? There is always a scenario, a need where a business or a product can actually benefit by having, in addition to a core funnel-based capability, a chat-based capability adds value to the overall end user experience, is the observation I had.
Interesting. So, I mean, continuing on that thought, I actually had a follow-up question, which the audience members can also see right now on the screen. Obviously, I'm guessing all three of you being market leaders have huge volumes when it comes to customer support. So that is definitely one reason why you would do conversational AI. But Shishadri, like as a follow-on to what you just mentioned, like what was the primary reason why did you guys decide to deploy bots versus probably, let's say, use some other technology?
So at Goibibo, being a travel company, and travel is one of those categories which has a very high informational lead pre and post a transaction is completed, right? So there are people who want to know about check-in times, right? And I'm sure Varitan probably also observed something similar. The questions on amenities is what he mentioned earlier on, right? So those kinds of informational queries are very high, and we have a running saying inside the org, which is that the nature of support issues for us, or post-transaction issues for us, it has two small heads and a very, very long tail that overshadows the head, right? So, and we felt that chat as a medium was a great way to provide an insanely better experience than a traditional channel like voice. So our motivation was to really find a way to make it easy, very easy for a customer to access these kinds of informational queries, which can be easily served to them in a Q&A kind of a format, which is a dialogue kind of a format, as opposed to, let's say, a funnel based or an FAQ based format. And chat seemed to be like orders of magnitude better, and to improve the overall customer experience was our primary motivation to work on a chat capability. And when we talk to users, we hear the same things, right? We hear that, for example, they're sitting in a meeting, they just think about a weekend plan, right? Imagine it's a Friday and it's a Saturday, Sunday, weekend trip that they've planned with their family or wife, right? So they just quickly pull out their phone and then find out their time, right? Now imagine doing this in a traditional support channel where you have to wait, you have to talk to somebody, right? And explain to that person, navigate through a bunch of menu options. A chat experience is it comes across from our user interactions that it is insanely better.
Got it. So what I'm hearing you really say is that you decided to use bots as a way to really elevate customer experience.
Yes.
And make it easy for customers to access this information, which is repetitive and frequent in nature.
Absolutely.
Interesting. Arun, what is Grofers' point of view when it comes to the reason why you went ahead with conversational AI?
Mm-hmm. So in a nutshell, at Grofers, we had two motivators to go into conversational AI. The biggest one was scale, and the second one was cost. Now, when I say scale, so Grofers is at a journey where we are growing 15-20% month on month, right? And when that happens, you can't really keep pace with that in your customer support in traditional manner by hiring people and training them every month, and then you have to provision for office space, and it just becomes administratively impossible to keep the same level of customer experience at that speed of growth, right? So chat conversational AI kind of becomes a must-have to grow at that speed, if you ask me, right? And especially if you have, if you know the business well enough to actually get into conversational AI. The second one is cost, right? And that fundamentally comes from a philosophy at Grofers where everything is geared towards maximizing the discount for the customer. Or, one of our promises is that we have the lowest prices across in grocery, right? And for us to keep that promise, we need to make sure that we are running lean in every possible space, right? Right from our operations in terms of logistics, in terms of warehousing, in terms of purchasing, all the operational aspects of business, and even all the, the support services, as you call it, like HR and, even customer support comes in this way. But so reducing cost while maintaining a good level of customer service, that's kind of the need of the hour at Grofers, and that's why we decided to move into conversational AI.
Wow, interesting. Very different perspectives. Like one organization is really thinking about chatbots as a way to elevate customer experience, and Grofers on the other hand is really thinking about how can we scale while still getting maximum bang for the buck. Very interesting point of views. I kind of move on to the next question. So one of the things which we saw in our audience profiles is that there are a lot of startups who have joined, there are a lot of e-commerce companies who have joined, and a bunch of them have not used chatbots or conversational AI as yet. So what we wanted to do was quickly, for all the audience members, we wanted to take a quick poll that so far, if you've not used conversational AI, what's the real top reason for that? Obviously, companies who are using chatbots need not reply to this poll, but would love to kind of understand from the audience members here, why is it that you're not really using conversational AI? We'll give out a minute for people to vote, and then we'll kind of also show the results. As you guys vote, we've seen there are some people who've not been able to hear us clearly. The only solution is our traditional hack of disconnect the webinar and log in again, and hopefully it will work. Cool. I think we will give another 10 seconds. If you've not voted, please share your votes. So you may select multiple options in terms of what's the primary reason. Awesome. We will close the polling now. All right, you guys should be able to see the results. Fairly distributed votes in terms of what's the primary reason. This was a multi-select option. So from what we are seeing here is cost, not having enough traffic, and the companies not being able to be ready to be able to handle bots seem to be the primary three reasons. Wow, interesting. So let me kind of use that and kind of ask the panelists that these are some of the reasons why the audience members could have still not implemented chatbots. But within your own organizations, when you decided to kind of implement bots, what were the biggest learnings, and how did you go about, structuring the entire implementation? I would like to start with Seshadri on this one, because Goibibo is one of the pioneers when it comes to implementing bots. So any insights there, Seshadri?
Yeah, so I'd like to play on top of one of the points that was mentioned in the poll response as well, which says the system is not ready, right? And this is something that we did encounter like a while back when we started this journey, and we have taken that problem and invested in building a platform approach to this, which is that we have a full stack chat platform built in-house in this case, where we have a team of engineers who work on tweaking the system and making it ready, such that another set of engineers who have core access and understanding of business logic or systems that power certain categories and verticals, they write use cases on top of it. This is how we basically went about solving that problem, and that has been our significant significant learning in this particular area. That's probably number one, and this worked very well for us, because not only was it a separation of concerns, right? You had two teams doing two different things, and they could pursue their individual goals and in that area. But it also helped because engineers like using something that their peers have developed, right? So it creates a lot of like, you tried something, okay, I used it yesterday and I found this problem. It creates the right kind of like positive loop inside an org, engineering org, to solve the problem and then move forward on addressing the system questions and the issues that we faced. So this is probably the first learning that we had, which was to take a platform approach to this.
Just a follow-on question on that, Seshadri, for you. How long did it take for you to build this platform out, and like how many engineers worked on this?
So I won't be able to share a count of the exact number of engineers on this, but it was a group of at least north of 3-4 people, and probably not working full time on this. They had other things that they were moving back and forth, and again, it was hard to pin a time to it, because I think these were blocks. When we encountered a certain issue on this, we set about solving this. So if you were to just like add the man days roughly, right, you would get something in the order of like a couple of months, a little more than that maybe, is kind of the time that it took to clear out the blocks inside the system, just make the system, the engineering system, ready to support a capability.
Got it.
Like chat.
Okay.
Yes. So the other learning that we had, and this is something that I would encourage everyone to kind of focus on, is that there is never going to be a scenario where a human is not needed, right? AI, ML, NLP are not technologies that work this way at all, and we all know that, right? So it's almost very important to plan for the human side of the experience, and that's something that we looked at very closely. So I'll just like share this one example, right? One anecdote that we observed, which is that when a chat transitions from a bot to a human, it is very important to look at what happens between the user and the agent interaction in those first few moments, because the user has been accustomed to getting a real-time quick response up till that point that a human has come into the conversation. So his baseline expectation is an instant response in the order of a couple of seconds. But right, and that's why this this metric, as we call it as first response time, is very crucial. But this metric is very difficult to move, because it will require you to plan really well and have the right number of people available at any given point in time, at different points in the points of time in the day, to give that first response, not just in minutes but in seconds, right? We measure that in as like, for example, we measure that as 80th percentile first response and 90th percentile first response, and it has to be in the order of like 5-10 seconds. It can be just a placeholder response. It can be something that tells the user that, hey, I'm looking at your query, I will need more time to read your answers, read through your transcripts, and then provide you with a resolution. But being able to work on the experience at that level is something that is very crucial to solving an end user's problem, such that his experience is happy on this platform, and not something that we're doing because it's a cost saving for us.
Got it. Wow, that's very interesting. Where you mentioned about the importance of being supported by human agents as well. And I know for a fact that even at Oyo, there is a very deep thought when it comes to marrying chatbots with human agents. Let me pull in Varitant on this one, and also like understand from him what was Oyo's learnings when it comes to implementing the bot solutions.
Yeah. Thanks, Kartik. So, at Oyo, we kind of took a different approach, as Seshadri was talking earlier. So we started our customer support, like we always had a customer support on call, and then we started the same thing via a normal chat interface. So we started our chat on our consumer app, and then, as many of you know, like the WhatsApp for Business came in for many of the organizations, and early last year we started our customer support chat on WhatsApp Oyo channel too. But like it always involved a end human agent who used to basically chat with the users and resolve the queries, and we used to measure all the first response time and average resolution time metrics and the overall CSAT scores, etc. But like as the organization grew, we always knew that we had to come up with something scalable in terms of the technology. So that's when we started building the chatbot scenario like mid of the last year on our own. But like once we built the chatbot scenario for WhatsApp, so we started with the channel which used to get the most number of queries, which was WhatsApp Oyo business channel for us. And we started integrating our chatbot. We built it in-house. Like a couple of engineers worked on it for a month and a half or so. And we started with an MVP, we launched it, and then we started building up cases. So this was the scenario for us. And But at the end of the day, of course, we always knew, as Seshadri also mentioned, that there would not be a scenario where 100% of your queries would be resolved by a bot. There would always be something that would be done via a bot, which would not require a human interface. But there would always be something where a human would be required to talk to the customer and resolve it, because it would be out of bounds for a bot. And both of these scenarios are going quite good for us. We have a clear understanding of what scenarios will need a bot interface and what scenarios will need a human interface, and what will require starting with the bot and then falling off to the human. So yeah, we have like quite well prioritized it, and like to call it out, like we haven't done any particular marketing or PR thing for our bot right now, but and also not for the WhatsApp Oyo for Business channel, but we are getting like thousands of customer queries that used to come on our customer support phone number. Now they are coming on WhatsApp, and they are being like handled by the chatbot quite well for us.
Interesting. Would you be able to share like what's the split between queries resolved by bots versus queries resolved by human agents?
So yeah, like on a higher level, like I would say that we haven't yet basically developed our bot to handle everything that we want to, but till now, like north of 50% of our queries are easily handled by our bots.
Wow, interesting. Wow, that's pretty cool. And that actually is a great segue for the entire panel for my next questions, because all three of you have kind of gone ahead and invested in bots and have run multi sprint cycles to make sure that the bot is great. But everyone is really questioning, and even our clients, that hey, what does really say that the bot was effective? Sure, customer support cost came down, call center came down, volume came down. These are some of the metrics people are kind of referring to, but within your organization, I would like to understand what are the one or two top metrics which you're using to track the effectiveness of the bot implementations. And I would like to kind of start with Arun here in terms of how Grofers measures effectiveness.
Sure. So at Grofers, we kind of split it into two large buckets, right? The first one is, does it work for the customer? And that's where most of the metrics that Varitant and Sheshadri were talking about fall in, which is what is the first response time, right? How quickly are you able to start a conversation with a customer? What is average resolution time? How quickly are you able to finish it? What is the CSAT, which is customer satisfaction scores? All of that compared to the traditional chat or even other channels such as call, etc. Right? So that's a first bucket of metrics that we measure. The second bucket of metrics is how does it work for the company as such, right? Again, some of the metrics like you mentioned is what percentage of chats are automatically handled by the bot itself, right? That is one of the metrics that we measure. The other kind of sort of detailed metrics that we measure is in terms of coverage as well. What sort of use cases do we have on bots, etc. Right? So those are the two large buckets, and the actual metrics depend on what sort of problem we are solving at that point.
Got it. Interesting. Is that what you also do at Goibibo, Sheshadri, or is there some unique metric, given that you guys are the pioneers in terms of bots and implementations?
Well, I'll just build on top of what Arun said, right? So there are two buckets of metrics that we look at. One that measures the quality of the experience from a purely user lens, and that's the most important metric. But we also give a fair deal of thought into the business metrics, and what numbers does it help us, and so on. And I'd like to share a quick story of how we track. We came about identifying one of our metrics for measuring the business side of the story. And this is a metric that we internally call as human interactions saved. We call it the HIS metric. So, and this basically originated when we wanted to assign a business value to each chat interaction, right? So this is fairly easy to do in call center terminologies, right? So there is a line running, you have a cost of an agent, you have an agent who's basically answering the question, and there is a cost associated there with him, and he takes a certain number of minutes to solve a query. But for an automated chat, it's kind of very hard to do this directly. So we went about a methodology where we identified all meaningful interactions with the bot. And I'll talk about what is the difference between an interaction and a meaningful interaction next. But from this overall pool, we subtracted conversations where a negative signal was observed. And I'll just talk about some negative signals as well, right? Following. So it doesn't matter that a user has opened the bot, right? Sure, I mean, we place it on the support page, the user is looking for help, he just clicks on that and he opens it. That isn't a strong enough signal for the bot to answer the question. So we say that a meaningful interaction is one in which the user has said at least one or two utterances from his side, depending on the use case for which he is asking, right? So that's a meaningful interaction where the bot has a fair shot of success. So once you've told two things, now I should be able to identify, right? So that's the pool of conversations and the pool of meaningful conversations. Now, there are some negative signals inside each conversation. So we remove, for example, we have feedback in the form of a thumbs up and a thumbs down. So we remove conversations where a thumbs down was observed. We have cases of a person, but it's not always true that people have give a feedback when they had a bad experience, right? Or give a feedback when they've had a good experience as well, right? So there is, so we basically assume a conversation to be negative if you've interacted with the bot and called us on the same mobile number on the same day, which means that the bot didn't work for you at such a level that you decided not to give a feedback and you instead chose to call us for the same issue, for the same booking, and so on. So that's another example of a negative interaction. And we have a bunch of other signals, user-related signals that we subtract. Now, once we started identifying this, we were able to say that, n number of conversations, X percentage of conversations were in the human interaction saved bucket, which meant that we had to improve that number to start getting greater business value out of this whole project and initiative. And that's been our journey. When we started, we were like only about 30% of conversations, for example, were in the human interaction saved bucket. So over time, we've slowly doubled that number, closely in the range of 60% of conversations are now happening into the human interaction saved bucket. This doesn't tell the whole story. Like I said, it answers the business part of the question in a more detailed way.
Wow, interesting. That is a fairly intense and robust way of measuring the bot performance. I'm like very, very impressive in terms of how you kind of approach that. Interesting. I think that's a very valuable input, not just for our audience members, in fact, even for our data scientists at Haptik, because at the end of the day, we are trying to measure what is the cost save and what's the benefit of deploying bots when it comes to human agents. So very interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah. I think it helps that there is a strong leadership alignment inside Goibibo and the larger GoMMT organization to get to this level of depth, and that's something that I would encourage you all to build inside your org to start getting to the level of depth that's needed.
Got it. All right, awesome. Like with that thought in mind, I'll kind of keep the conversation going. In fact, while we've all been able to, in some way or the other, measure effectiveness. And yes, companies who have deployed bots really have seen the value. And as you can see on the slide, which I'm sharing right now, bots are here to stay, right? This is a report by Salesforce for India, which says that in the next 18 months, approximately 140% jump is what is expected in terms of the rate of AI use in the organizations. So yes, there is an upward trend. Yes, the effectiveness is being measured and companies are able to attribute a value to it. While the overall macro trend looks positive, I actually wanted to ask each one of you in terms of what is the future of chatbots and conversational AI in your specific organizations. Like, how do you see now in terms of what is next? And let me start with Varitant here in terms of what is Oyo's perspective of what we'll see in the next 1 year when it comes to bots.
Yeah, sure, Kartik. So if you're talking in terms of Oyo's perspective, so like over the last 6 months or so, we have seen the chatbots thing pick up quite well for us. But I would like to mention that it's like quite dependent upon the channel that you are integrating your bot with and the kind of audience that you are basically helping out by integrating the bot. So like if I talk in terms of a long-term vision, then of course, like as an organization, we are on the track of basically integrating the bot for every customer and on every channel and every query. Like the bot should be this robust that it can solve each and every query for us. But if we are talking about a short-term vision of say 1 year, then we do not want to basically rush into things and do the integration everywhere and not come up with a good customer experience, but rather what we are trying to do is build the cases that we are sure of that the bot will be able to solve for us, and like do not interfere with the human interaction part for the cases that we are sure that the current customer base that we are catering to right now are more comfortable dealing with the humans. So let me just give you an example. So as I talked initially that for us the cases like booking confirmation cancellation or modifying a booking or maybe things like getting a directions to a hotel. These are the cases that the user does not want to basically hold on for quite long, and he or she just wants an instant reply. So basically when I write on my WhatsApp chat that send me directions to my hotel for my next booking ID, then within a second the bot should just respond. But if you're talking about a scenario where the user wants to maybe make a booking or maybe wants to know the payment and the refund status, then like the bot giving a reply like your refund is on the way and will be credited to you within 7 days is not what a user might expect right now. So here a human intervention might be required that, okay, the a human is replying on the chat that like the exact status is that we have processed it and we have contacted your bank and your bank has given us this reply and it will be credited to you. Like the ideal time is 7 days, but it will be credited to you as soon as within 2 days. So like these are some of the dynamic cases that we think are basically that might need some more time rather than a year to be solved directly via a bot. So we have made a very conscious call of what to do via a bot and what to do via a human interface, and according to what kind of demographic you are dealing with. But yeah, eventually, of course, everything would be going to a conversational AI or a chatbot scenario once we know that the bot is capable of handling it in a very good way.
Got it. Interesting. Arun, let me kind of pose the same question, but then where do you see Grofers and bots, let's say 3 years from now, like a little slightly longer term view?
Sure. So before I get there, so at Grofers, we are at sort of a nascent stage of, where we are with conversational AI, right? So right now it's sort of exploratory, and with that exploration comes a lot of possibilities in terms of what do we do right now, what do we do after 2 years, 3 years, etc. So right now, if you ask me, one of the major things that we're doing, or where we see this going, is to sort of explore all the possibilities where chatbots can actually help us. And this is similar to what Vaditant was speaking about as well, right? And that depends on the business as well. So let's say you have a few set of existing value propositions that is very clear, that's very mature, that can transition into a chatbot pretty effectively. But if you have a new business proposition or let's say a new loyalty program, for example, or a variation to your value proposition, that is where the answers might not be clear immediately till the business matures. So there it might continue in a sort of traditional modes. In sort of 2 to 3 years, the place where we see it going primarily is in terms of channel explosion, which is essentially, Varitant was speaking about WhatsApp for business being a channel, right? We also see channels such as Instagram becoming big, or other forms of essentially social commerce coming into play, where interaction with the customer is going to be across multiple social media platforms, and it becomes very hard for a human to effectively take care of all the interactions, right? And we see sort of conversational AI becoming key there to solve problems for the customer.
Got it. Interesting. So what I'm hearing from both of you is, in a year from now, tighten the use cases, make sure the right use cases are being solved by the bot, 3 years from now, basically make sure that you're available across channels and the bot is able to respond to users from multiple different areas. Interesting. So, I mean, Sheshadri, let me kind of put you in a spot here and ask for a longer term view, even more, let's say 5 to 7 years from now, where bot is able to solve most queries, bot is available on all channels. Now, what next? Like, where do you see what will happen, let's say 5, 7 years from now?
It's definitely a very hard question, so don't hold me to my answers on this one. So because this is the best case scenario that we're all hopefully hoping that will happen, and yeah, the future has surprises. But in the best case scenario, I think here is what would have happened from a post-sales perspective. I think a conversational product or a chatbot's moment of truth would have arrived, right? It will definitely be the primary support product. At least at Goibibo, we want to get to a future where we are able to make it work for every player in the system, right? For the customer, for us, and it's still a learning journey, and we've just like barely getting started on this. So in a 5 to 7 year time frame, it will probably be heading towards a point where we are. This is definitely the primary support product, not just for Goibibo. I see this happening across multiple businesses. There's a very strong likelihood of that happening. From a pre-sales perspective, I think a conversational product will definitely play a role in assisting transactions. That's for sure, right? Especially for higher category purchases, high involvement decisions, right? A chat will keep kind of like popping up. It will be like an omnipresent assistant that kind of keeps. It could be one of the ecosystem players. It could be somebody else, which keeps keeps you informed over a long purchase cycle. That may definitely happen. An end-to-end transaction I see has likelihood of happening, although there is a possibility that stronger possibility for fairly standardized SKUs, right? So not a hotel booking, for example, where there is a lot of variance from one hotel to another for the same price point, same star rating, and so on. But more like, for example, in our context, at Goibibo's context, maybe a cabs booking is something that we can definitely foresee may happen in such a long 5 to 7 year time frame. Apart from that, I think just taking a broader ecosystem view, the channel explosion point that Arun mentioned also is something that has a fairly strong likelihood of happening, right? A bunch of headless experiences across different channels, right? That may definitely happen. And although there is a strong ecosystem event waiting to happen in this area, to kind of make it easy for everyone to get started, get familiarized with the concepts of how to measure a bot and so on. But let's say that in a 5 to 7 year time frame, I'm fairly hopeful of an event like that happening and bots being more pervasive and more meaningful and value adding to our lives.
Got it. Very interesting. That's how exactly we also think of evolution of bots at Haptik. In fact, we think bots will become fairly conversant and easy to run on voice. We think multilingual will become like a default, and all of these experiences will kind of bring more and more users into being comfortable using bots as well. Great. So we are almost out of time. In fact, we've overshot by 3 minutes. So I'm going to quickly jump into just a couple of questions which we got from the audience members. While we've kind of discussed bots and customer support, I want to move the conversation away from that topic to something different. So let me just, get Arun's view on this one. Lot of talk happens around AI, and implementing AI means data security is a concern. What is Grofers' point of view on this particular question? This was a question posed by at least 3 audience members in terms of customer data and security. So Arun, your thoughts on this?
Sure. So again, I would take this with a pinch of salt as personal opinion, because I'm in no means an expert on data security. But essentially, what I would kind of do is split it into two, right? One is what is customer data that is personally identifiable to the user, which is let's say their mobile number, their address. These are things that you can use to uniquely identify a customer, outside of the scope of transactions, right? I would say those are things that companies sort of put a lot of emphasis on, and even we at Grofers put a lot of emphasis on not having that particular set of information exposed outside of the core services, right? Those are used only for need basis that is there, right? This is where, call number masking and some of those kind of technologies also help out in terms of sharing a sort of contact to a customer without sharing their personally identifiable information, right? The second bit of it is the transactional data that a customer has, right? Which is what sort of transactions have they done in the past, right? Now that is to me, that is where a lot of the gray area is, right? Is how much do you actually share a customer's past transaction data to improve their service, right? My view on that and is sort of that's where a opt-in sort of program comes into play, right? And this is in general when you're working with any partners, or when you want to expose customer data, it's better to ask the customer, hey, do you want to sort of customize your experience in that platform by leveraging AI there, right? If and purely from a chat perspective, I would say that is not much of a privacy concern where a customer's transactional data is shared, because the customer is coming in primarily to get a transactional query answered.
Got it.
Right. So I would sort of split it into sort of those two buckets in terms of personally identifiable information is a no-go. That's where that has to be strictly behind a wall. The transactional data is sort of the gray area where an opt-in sort of program works. And purely from a chat perspective, since customers are coming in to get some of their transactional queries answered, it's fair game.
Fair enough. I think that's a great way of kind of putting that thought across. All right, I'll take one last question because this question's answer probably affects a lot of our attendees here. We've seen a lot of startups also join the webinar, and the question really was, hey, for someone who's just starting out on the conversational AI journey, what is that one advice which each of you will give, which could be really the takeaway of this particular session as well? Just in one line, Varitant, Arun, and Seshadri, what is the one thing they should think about if they're starting off the conversational AI journey? A liner from you, Varitant.
Yeah, I would like to just advise on how we did it. So like just the main thing that requires here is to be focused. Just do it for the sake of doing it. So just be focused on online platform that is going to generate the best ROI for you, and always start with a good MVP and then just keep on building over it rather than just wanting to achieve the perfect bot in the first go.
Got it. Focus and MVP to start off with. Got it. Okay, great. Seshadri?
I think my thought on this is classic like product thought, which is start with the user, like find out how a bot can actually make a difference vis-a-vis other areas, other product paradigms, and then basically work backwards from there. I think that's the original product recipe, and it doesn't change in my view when you're using conversational AI. So there are pockets where chat works really well. So maybe if it happens to fit your use case there, double down on it and go aggressively and build an MVP like Varitant mentioned, and then explore your journey.
Got it. So don't force fit, think user first and then start is what I'm
Absolutely. Yep.
Awesome. Okay. Arun.
So yeah, I think Varitant and Seshadri kind of summed it up well. The only angle that I would add to a new startup is to sort of figure out the value proposition as well, right, for the company. So company, user, and then start small is the way I would go about it.
Interesting. Awesome. Thank you so much for your time, panelists and all the audience members. This has been a really, really interesting session. We did get a lot of questions. So at Haptik, we'll try and respond to each of you individually. Feel free to kind of write to us if more questions you guys have. And really, thank you so much for your time. And I hope this was useful to you. Keep following us for more such sessions. And before I close the panel, thank you, Varitant, thank you, Seshadri, and thank you, Arun, for taking the time out and making this so interesting.
Thanks, Kartik, for having us. It was a good experience.
Thank you.